This audio is brought to you by Muslim Central. Please consider donating to help cover our running costs and future projects by visiting www.muslimcentral.com/donate.
Alhambra Productions presents The Rights and Responsibilities of Marriage.
السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحابته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم لا علم إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الكرام. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن وأعوذ بك من العجز والكسل وأعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل وأعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال. Alhamdulillah. Before we go into the subject, what I wanted to do, because there's a beautiful hadith about Imam Ali, it's in At-Tirmidhi, and when he talked about all the end of latter days tribulations and all the difficulties, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Fitanun kaqata' al-layl al-mudhlim." The tribulations would come like periods of a dark black night, one after another. And Imam Ali radiallahu anhu said, "Man makhraj yawma idhin ya Rasulullah." How do we get out of that in those days? And he said, "Kitabullah." The way out is the Book of Allah. Because that's really for us, that is the explanation. And so I want to look, this relates to male-female relations, which is what this is about, inshallah, and then the result of those relationships, which are generally children. The chapter which is called Ar-Rum, Surah Ar-Rum, generally it's called Ar-Rum, and it refers to the Eastern Roman Empire. But Ar-Rum generally refers also to Europeans, and also to Christian. It begins like the Baqarah with Alif Lam Mim, and then it just mentions about the Romans, غُلِبَتِ الرُّوم, that the Romans have been defeated. فِي أَدْنَى الْأَرْضِ, and this was in the nearer land, but it also means the lowest point, which is Palestine. Palestine is the lowest point on the earth. Geographically, it literally is the lowest point on the earth, which is one of the meanings of that verse. And then it's remarked that within 10 years, Allah is the command in the former case, and in the latter, in that day believers will rejoice, which was also the victory that the Prophet ﷺ was given on the same day. So this is one of the ghaybiyat of the Quran. The victory that the Prophet ﷺ had on that day when he defeated the polytheists also occurred on the same day that the Romans regained the upper hand against the Persians. So the believers rejoiced, one, because the Quran was true for them, but also because the victory came on the same day. And then it says, He helps to victory whom He wills, which is interesting also, because one of the things about يَنْصُرُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ, that Allah gives victory to whomever He pleases. يَعِزُّ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيُذِلُّ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. He gives victory to whomever He pleases, and He abases whomever He pleases. And if you look historically in the Islamic history, there are many periods where the Muslims were defeated quite radically. And certainly the Tartar period is an incredible period. But, after Genghis Khan comes down with his hordes and overwhelms the Muslims in Iraq and Persia and all those areas, Tamerlane, Timur Lenk, becomes Muslim. So by one generation, they become Muslim. And it's interesting because they actually revived Islam. They become revivers of Islam. So they conquered the Muslims, but then they actually become Muslims. And when they came in, nobody did what they did. Ibn Athir said, who was one of the great historians of Islam, from the beginning of time, until the present day, there has never been a greater scourge on earth that there was of the Mughals. And he saw it. He saw what they did. But that was his opinion as a historian, that never in the history of human civilization had there been a worse scourge. I mean, they went in and massacred everybody. The Euphrates River ran black from ink because they dumped millions of books. I mean, a lot of the books of Islam disappeared during that time. Imam Malik had several books that are gone. He had a book on astronomy, Imam Malik. And then it says, it is a promise of Allah and Allah does not break His promise. وَعْدَ اللَّهِ لَا يُخْلِفَ اللَّهُ وَعْدَهُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ, which is a really important motif in the Quran that occurs again and again. Most people don't know, which is another really important thing to keep into consideration, that from a Quranic understanding, most people really don't know what's going on, neither in the web or the weaver of the web. People just don't know what's going on. Most people, the life is so short that they really can't work out what's going on. And that's the beauty of Revelation, is that you have this opportunity. The Torah, the Injil, and then the Quran gave the people who received those revelations, gave them the opportunity to really see reality as it was. I mean, that's what this is. It's a blueprint to that. Now, this next verse is really interesting in relation to Ar-Rum, because it says, يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ عَنِ الْآخِرَةِ هُمْ غَافِلُونَ. They know about the outward of the world, but they've forgotten about the other side of this world, which is the mirror image of this world, which is Akhirah. So this is Ula, and then there's Akhirah. This is the first, and then there's the second. Right? We come into this world, and we're here for this short period of time, and there's a reminder here that you can get lost in the Zahir. يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا. See, so you start looking at that web, and the web is so intricate that you can spend your entire life just looking at the web and trying to work out how the web works, and forget about the source of the whole thing, of where it all comes from, and then what it's pointing to, because the web is pointing to the weaver of the web, right? The spider. When you see the web, there's a spider nearby. And the world is also pointing and indicating something, which is there is a force behind all of this, and if you forget that, then you've forgotten the whole point of the thing. But because of the power of the world and coming into the world, it's very easy to forget, by the nature of the world, that we get so caught up in the world that we forget that not only are we in-time temporal creatures, we're moving out of this world into another world. And one of the things that years ago, Murabta al-Hajj, when I was leaving Tuwaymarat, he told me, he said, as you move towards Kamur, which is the town that you get the car from, he said, every step you make towards that is a step closer to your destination and a step further away from where you've left. And he said, and that's what the world is like. Right? Every breath you take is a breath closer to your ultimate destination, which is to leave the world. And on the escalator, I was on that escalator, I've told people this, but it was really interesting. I was with Sheikh Abdullah, and we were on this escalator in the airport, and it was the first time we'd ever been on an escalator. And we were sitting there moving along, and he said, Subhanallah, this is just like the world. You think you're stationary, but you're moving. And then when we came up to the end of it, there was a sign, and it said, beware, the end comes abruptly. So I translated the sign for him, and he just said, Subhanallah. So that's the thing about, whenever you get on an escalator, just remember that that's what the world is like. And the thing about being in a boat is you'll often hear people say, it's so nice to watch these things pass by. Right? That's their perspective. But they're not passing by, you're passing by. They're all staying where they are. But that's the illusion. It's that parallax view that you fall into because of the nature of distances. So Knowing this world, according to our tradition, is that when you die, the only thing you remember are things related to the akhirah. All of your knowledge that you learned in the world is forgotten on your death, except what you learn that benefits you in the akhirah. All the worldly knowledge goes. And that's something to think about. And then right after that, أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. Don't they think about themselves? Don't they reflect on the nature of the nafs? مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. Allah didn't create the heavens and the earth and what's between them except with the truth. وَأَجْرٍ مُسَمَّى. And to an appointed term. And even material sciences have arrived to that understanding that the universe does have, it would appear that it has an appointed term. It's going to end. وَإِنَّ كَثِيرًا مِّنَ النَّاسِ بِلِقَاءِ رَبِّهِمْ لَكَافِرُونَ. But so many people about meeting their Lord are in a state of rejection. They don't believe it, that it's going to happen. أَوَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Haven't they traveled in the earth? فَيَنْظُرُوا كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Haven't they reflected on the people who existed before them? كَانُوا أَشَدَّ مِنْهُمْ قُوَّةً. They had greater strengths than they did. وَأَثَارُوا الْأَرْضَ وَعَمَرُوهَا أَكْثَرَ مِمَّا عَمَرُوهَا. They actually did things with the earth and cultivated the earth in ways that you haven't done. And I don't care what, all the buildings that modern man has made. Look at the pyramids. Look, because we don't even know what was going on there. People don't really know what the pyramid... look at these places around the world and reflect on this idea, and then look at the flimsiness of modern civilization, how easy it is to just disappear. Because, an atomic bomb could obviously destroy, but... So, this is the idea that the ancients, they did extraordinary things. وَجَاءَتْهُمْ رُسُلُهُمْ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ. And these messengers came to them with all these clear signs. فَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيَظْلِمُهُمْ. So it was not Allah who was oppressing them. It wasn't Allah who was oppressing them. وَلَكِنْ كَانُوا أَنفُسُهُمْ يَظْلِمُونَ. But they oppressed themselves. And that's another important motif to remember in the Quran. There's this constant understanding that we oppress ourselves. And that there's things to learn in the world. And one of them is that when you point fingers outside of yourself, you're deflecting always from the real work. Because you cannot change what is outside yourself in the way that you can change what's inside yourself. ثُمَّ كَانَ عَاقِبَةَ الَّذِينَ أَسَاءُوا السُّوءَ. And then the affair of those who did these foul things, أَنْ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ وَكَانُوا بِهَا يَسْتَهْزِئُونَ, that they denied the signs of God and then they made fun of them. And this is a really important thing in the Quran, istihza, the idea of making fun. None of the people that made fun of the Prophet became Muslim. Not one of them. They were called the mustahzi'un. Not one of them became Muslim. The people that mock and joke about any sacred thing, the Prophet never made fun of people's beliefs, ever. You'll find nowhere in the seerah where he made fun of anyone's belief. When he saw people that were worshiping idols, he felt compassion. He did not feel mockery or superiority. He really wanted those people to be free of the fetters of superstition. That this is not worthy of worship. And that's what La ilaha illallah means. There's nothing worthy of worship. That's the interpretation that the scholars give it. La ilaha, la ma'bud bihaqqin. There's nothing worshipped in truth other than Allah. There can be things worshipped, but they're not worshipped in truth. La ma'buda bihaqqin siwa Allah. There's nothing worshipped in truth except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, this idea of making fun of Allah's signs is really, really dangerous.
This audio is brought to you by Muslim Central. Please consider donating to help cover our running costs and future projects by visiting www.muslimcentral.com/donate.
And then Allah says, Allahu yabda'ul khalq thumma yu'iduhu thumma ilayhi turja'un. He begins creation and then He recreates it. So the recreation of the world. ثُمَّ إِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. And you return to Him. So look at creation. What we're being told there is if you look at the world, you'll see that there's creation and then there's recreation. And what that should indicate to you, ulul albab, people who think about this, is that you too have been created and you too will be recreated. So just like you see these hills not that long ago and they were all barren, and now they're all green, like they were last year. So they've been brought back to life after dying. وَيَوْمَ تَقُومُ السَّاعَةُ. And when the day when this moment really here it means, sa'a is not really the hour, it means the moment. Right, sa'a, because, qama min sa'atihi in Arabic, he got up immediately. The Arabs use sa'a to mean something that's immediate, and the sa'a is, it's translated generally as the hour, but it means that momentous event of the recreating. Yubdis al-mujrimun, and that's when the criminals, the mujrimun, the people of ijram, the people that did all these horrible things in the world, yublisu, they have iblas. In other words, they despair. Because now it's suddenly all come home. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُمْ مِنْ شُرَكَائِهِمْ شُفَعَاء. And none of these things they associated with other than Allah, they won't intercede for them. وَكَانُوا بِشُرَكَائِهِمْ كَافِرِينَ. And then they will even disbelieve in all of these things they worshipped in this world. They disbelieve in them. Because they realize it's empty. It's one of the signs of the latter days is that money becomes so prevalent that nobody wants it. It's one of the signs of the latter days. And the Prophet ﷺ said people will actually hold money in their hand and they say, for this I killed people. I actually took life for this, and now it's meaningless. So it's about these mental formations, right? It's about how you're viewing the world. Because your attachment to it at any given moment does not mean that you're going to be attached to it at another moment. There's people that will cling on to life at any cost, but then if they get a terminal illness, they want to die. Right? There's people that will actually ask other people to help them kill themselves. So attachment, the nature of that attachment is that at any given moment you can be attached. But it's not permanent because what you're attached to is not permanent. As long as you're attached to an impermanent thing, then your attachment by its nature is not permanent. And this is really important in relation to marriage, because that's one of the things about the nature of human relation is attachment. This idea of ta'alluq, that we become attached to the ephemeral. And especially the four things, because the Prophet ﷺ said, تُنْكِحَ الْمَرْأَةُ لِأَرْبَعَ. A woman is married for four things. He's speaking to the men. A woman is married because of four reasons. لِجَمَالِهَا وَلِمَالِهَا وَلِنَسَبِهَا أَوْ لِحَسَبِهَا وَلِدِينِهَا. For her beauty, for her wealth, for her lineage. And then he said, and for her deen, her relationship with Allah. And then he said, فَضْفَرْ بِذَاتِ الدِّينِ تَرِبَتْ يَدَاكَ. Fadfar means, dhafar in the Arabic language is really to achieve, to attain, but it has the idea of attaining something really valuable. The Arabs don't use it. He said, attain this woman of deen, and may you have success. Because the thing about deen, those other three things are impermanent. They don't survive the world. Whereas deen, according to our understanding, it survives the world. So your wealth doesn't survive the world, your beauty doesn't survive the world, and your lineage doesn't survive the world, because when the nafkha happens, the Quran says, لا أنساب بينهم يومئذ. There's no lineage between them. Ibn Abbas was asked about that in relation to the Prophet's family, and he said that's in the first nafkha. In the second nafkha, then when the intercession happens, there is benefit in that, because people have intercession. And obviously the Prophet ﷺ is the first and foremost. And then it says, وَيَوْمَ تَقُمَ السَّاعَةُ يَوْمَئِذٍ يَتَفَرَّقُونَ. And the day when this momentous event occurs, on that day, they will be sundered. They will be dispersed into groups. There's no unity then. So the thing about the nature of this world is the group mentality, what Ibn Khaldun called the asabiyya, that every group has this idea of asabiyya, that I'm part of a people, and you hold on to that pride, the tribal mentality, which Islam really came to remove that idea of, it doesn't mean to reject the people, to reject the clan, but it means not to see the clan as your ultimate reality, because the clan is incidental to your true nature. The Ethiopian cannot change his color and the leopard cannot change his spots, like the Bible says. Is that the outward, it's only incidental to you. And as long as you're in the world, that's part of your reality. But if you make that your ultimate, if you identify yourself by this outward form, then you're in a state of delusion. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said that somebody asked him about asabiyya, and he said, it is to tu'inu qawmaka ala dhulm. It is to help your people do wrong. That's what's prohibited. In other words, it's not prohibited to help them do good. And it's also not prohibited to be concerned about your people first and foremost, because they're your people, and that's important, and Allah made that for a reason. So you should have a concern about your clan or your family. Al-aqrabun awla bin ma'ruf. Those closest to you have more right to your good than those in a distance. So there's nothing wrong with that. But the asabiyya is that when your clan overrides your principles. That's what is being condemned in Islam, is that tribalism. So that's all over. People will come even to their parents. Nafsi, nafsi. That's all over. So in this world, that plays a very important role. And you can see how, just in socioeconomic stratification in societies, how important, even in this culture, which might not be as severe as other cultures, because there's a kind of upward mobility, right? In some cultures, there's no upward mobility. You're stuck. In this culture, there's an upward mobility, but you can see that what you're born into, how much of an impact that's going to have on your success in the world. So to be born white in this country is an advantage, just by the mere fact that you were born with a different skin color. That's an advantage. So those things happen in this world, but in the next world, all of that has no relevancy. People are stripped of that reality. And they used it, those people that used it for wrong in this world, it's a grievous day, because they can't rectify those wrongs with it. They can't go to those, their shuraka. They can't go to all those people that they were manipulating, or their false idols, because that is an idol. I mean, the difference they say between the savage and the civilized is the savage, his idols are made of wood and stone, but the civilized, his idols are made of flesh and blood. The real difference is that the idols haven't changed. They're still idols, but it's just the form changes. And then he says, as for those who disbelieved and denied our revelation, denied the meeting of the hereafter, such will be brought to this adhab, this state of total alienation and distress.
This audio is brought to you by Muslim Central. Please consider donating to help cover our running costs and future projects by visiting www.muslimcentral.com/donate.
So then what happens is, فَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ حِينَ تُمْسُونَ وَحِينَ تُصْبِحُونَ. So glory to Allah, and subhana is nizzah. It is to declare the transcendence of your Lord over and above anything in creation. So don't reject the idea that the web has anything to do with reality. Reject that idea. And then it says, حِينَ تُمْسُونَ وَحِينَ تُصْبِحُونَ. as you come into the evening and as you come into the morning. In other words, the two ends of the day. And the secret of that is خَيْرُ الْأَعْمَالِ أَدْوَمُهَا وَإِنْ قَلْ. The best of actions are those that are most continuous, even if they're only small amounts. The point is that إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَمَلُّ حَتَّى تَمَلُّ. Allah does not weary of giving you reward until you weary of doing the right action. The point is that if you do good, and remembering Allah is the greatest of goods, if you do good, do it in that way that you will maintain it. Because if you try to do this all the time, you'll grow weary of it. You won't be able to do it. And this is one of the secrets of the ahwal of the world, just that our states change in the world. Sometimes you're happy. If you were happy all the time, you wouldn't appreciate the state. بِضِدِّهَا تَتَمَيُّزَ الْأَشْيَاء, like the Arabs say. But through opposites, things are distinguished. If you were always happy, you wouldn't appreciate it. If you were always satiated, you wouldn't appreciate it. So when you're hungry, and then nothing in the world tastes better than plain bread in the middle of the Sahara Desert. You can't eat it here, because you want the butter, you want the honey, you want the jam. But when you're in a place where it doesn't exist and somebody brings you some, it is incredible. So what is that? What changed? It's the idea of being deprived of something, and then when it's there, the appreciation is so much greater. And that's why Allah will distance you from Him. There are times when you will be distant from Allah. You won't be in that state where you're praying the way you should be praying, where you feel that presence. There's reasons for that. Allah does that for a reason, because if you were always in that state, you'd forget. And that's part of the nature of this world, is forgetting and remembering. And that's why this is the world of opposites. It's only the next world where the opposites are merged. But in this world, it's opposites. It's joy and grief. And then وَلَهُ الْحَمْدُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَعَشِيًّا وَحِينَ تُظْهِرُونَ. And He has praise in the heavens and in the earth. So in other words, what you're doing on the earth is being done in heaven. And this is important because this goes to the alignment. This is what really human beings are meant to do, is align with the heavens. And the heavens are in a state of praise and awareness. So what you're doing, all of our practices, even tawaf, according to the tradition, there are angels doing tawaf around the arsh. So everything that we're doing here is really aligning with another order that is perfect. And it's the representation of it in the world is the night sky. Right? That is the representation, because the order that you see in the night sky, and I'm talking about not looking into the telescopes, but just experiencing it with the human eye, and observing that order, that's what's happening. That's why the sun never changes. If you have a prayer schedule here for the entire year, I guarantee you can use it next year, and the year after, and the year after. It's not going to change. As long as you're alive, the prayer schedule that you got that has those prayer times, even though they change every day, they change by minutes every single day, they return back to where they started. And that's the nature of the heavenly order. So this alignment of doing in the earth what is done in the heavens. Then يُخْرِجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ. That's what this chapter, so much of this is about. And this is the emphasis of the Quran. He brings from the living death. He brings death from life. This is what Allah is doing. He's bringing death from life. وَيُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتِ مِنَ الْحَيِّ. And He brings life from death. These opposites are happening constantly in the world. Things are alive and they go into death and decay and death. And then things are dead and decayed and they're brought back to life. And then وَيُحْيِي الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. And He brings the earth back to life after it had died. وَكَذَلِكَ تُخْرَجُونَ. And you will also be brought forth like that. In other words, أَوَلَمْ يَتَفَكَّرُوا فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ. Haven't they thought about their own selves? Are they separate from the creation? Everything's happening around him, right? يَبْدَأُ الْخَلْقُ ثُمَّ يُعِيدُهُ. He starts it and then He recreates it. So these are all, again, these signs. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَكُم مِّن تُرَابٍ. Now here's where we get to this human phenomenon. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ And from amongst His signs, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَكُمْ مِنْ تُرَابٍ. He created you from dust, from soil, turab. And Fakhruddin al-Razi, radiallahu anhu, what he says is, of all the things in the world, the thing that is furthest away from life is dust. So, أَبْعَدُ الْأَشْيَاء عَنِ الْإِحْيَاء. It's the thing most furthest from bringing to life. Because if you look at the world, you have mineral, vegetable, and animal. And the mineral is earth. And that's what we came out of. So we go through these processes, and the point of this is that is a sign of God. وَمِنْ آيَاتِ أَنْ خَلَقَكُمْ مِنْ تُرَابٍ. He brought you out of earth. There's another verse that He created you from water. And that is not in contradiction with this verse, because both are true. That He created us from water, min ma'in mahin, from this vile fluid, and also that He created us from earth, that our original creation was from the earth. And then this creation is all water. It's all about water. That's how we were brought to life. And even through vegetation, if you look, the process, earth is brought to life through water. Without water, there is no earth. There is no life on earth. And from that earth, we either eat animals or we eat vegetables. And animals and vegetables are almost entirely water. I mean, if you actually look at what they're composed of, the majority of the vegetable is water. And animal life is about 70% water. So it's still water which is bringing us to life. And then He says, ثُمَّ إِذَا أَنْتُمْ بَشَرٌ. And then suddenly, أَنْتُمْ بَشَرٌ. Now, the suddenly here is this تَنْتَشِرُونَ, that suddenly you're everywhere. We were created from two human beings. Everybody on the earth goes back to the primordial soul, and from that primordial soul came the dyadic, the two souls, and then from those two came all the myriad and diverse peoples walking the earth. So this is the sign that Allah is saying. وَمِنْ آيَاتِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. And then from amongst His signs is that He created for you, مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ, from your own selves, mates. If you look at the basis, the foundation of human life, is this X and Y, right? The male and the female component. And from that basic component, Allah has created these two. The female is XX and the male is XY. So from these chromosomes, Allah has given us mates from our own selves. In other words, that we're mixed. He said, النِّسَاء شَقَائِقُ الرِّجَالِ. Women are split from men. In other words, they're half of us. So we're matched in a way that
This audio is brought to you by Muslim Central. Please consider donating to help cover our running costs and future projects by visiting www.muslimcentral.com/donate.
Now, this section in the Madkhal is very, very interesting. He has a long section about not sending your children to schools in which the teachers are non-Muslim. And the reason for that, he actually considers it prohibited. And the reason for that is the danger of things being taught that will cause the child to lose its faith. And this is 6th century that he wrote this. He also felt that until the child was old enough to be able to discern between what's true and what's false, he said at that point that they could learn from non-Muslims if there were sciences or knowledges that were beneficial to learn. But prior to that, in the early phase, that they should not, because of the possibility of losing the creed. And because what he says is the nature of children is that they believe whatever their teachers say when they're young. It's part of fitrah. Whatever the teacher says, they just take it as... In fact, to give you an example, one of my son's Quran teachers had a East Asian pronunciation on some things. And he would say, he said, A'udhu billahi. And I said, no, A'udhu. And he said, no, it's A'udhu. And I said, no, it's A'udhu. And he said, no. Khala said it was A'udhu. So he believed her before he would believe me, because I sent him to her. So no, she's right, not you. Because she's the teacher. And that's the way a child naturally, that's the way it works. They'll trust the teacher more than they'll trust the parent. So it's very dangerous for that reason. So, and that's one of the things that I've always had. I really believe that here a lot of parents think that it's the early years that they don't worry about. And it's really important to stress that it is not the early years. Those are the years to worry about. The later years, don't worry about those. I mean, the whole point of all those hadiths was, they get to a certain age, it's none of your business. Right? If you do your job those first 14 years, it's none of your business what happens after that. I mean, it is, obviously, but there's nothing you can do about it in that way. Whereas if you don't do your job those first 14 years, and then they go astray, or they do terrible things, then you share in it. It's your wrong. Because that's your donation to the world. It's your children. Now, I'm going to finish this with a poem, because I read from Surah Al-A'raf. There's an American poet, Edgar Allan Poe, who wrote a poem called Al-A'raf, the Heights. He'd actually read the Quran, because he quotes the Quran in some of his poems. But this poem isn't from Al-A'raf. It's called The Conqueror Worm. And I thought of it because of the story of Adam and Eve that I read, and then all these dramas that have emerged from our two parents having children, and all the dramas, and how it just keeps going. And this is a beautiful poem. It's a little dense when you first hear it, so let me read it, and then I'll quickly go through it. Lo, 'tis a gala night within the lonesome latter years, an angel throng bewinged bedight in veils and drowned in tears, sit in a theater to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Mimes in the form of God on high mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly, mere puppets they who come and go, at bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings in visible woe. That motley drama, oh, be sure it shall not be forgot, with its phantom chased forevermore by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth into the self-same spot, and much of madness and more of sin, and horror the soul of the plot. But see, amid the mimic rout, a crawling shape intrude, a blood-red thing that rise from out the scenic solitude. It rise and rise with mortal pangs, the mimes become its food, and seraphs sob at vermin fangs in human gore imbued. Out, out are the lights, out all, and over each quivering form the curtain, a funeral pall, comes down with the rush of a storm, while the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy man, and its hero, the conqueror worm. He basically says it's a gala night, all the angels are throngs, drowning in tears. They sit in this theater. The angels are watching this play of hopes and fears. And the orchestra is doing the music of the spheres. And then he says, mimes in the form of God on high. These actors that are playing out, thinking that they're God on high, mutter and mumble low. And they're moving all about, mere puppets, right? They're going all over the world, doing all these things they're doing, and this and that. And then he says, that motley drama, but don't think, even though this is a pretty motley drama that you're watching, don't think it will be forgot. And everybody's chasing this phantom of the world by a crowd that sees it not, but nobody can actually get it. And the circle keeps returning over and over again. People keep coming back, making the same mistakes, doing the same things over and over again, all of these things. Much madness, more sin, right? and horror the soul of the plot. Right? You just watch these people, because the angels have to watch all this stuff. They have to record it all. Right? They have to record Afghanistan. Right? They have to record the killing fields in Cambodia. They have to record the domestic violence going on all over the place. They have to record kidnappings. They have to record all the pedophilia. They have to record all the drug addicts. They have to record all the people slouched in the gutters and all these. I mean, they have to watch this whole thing. But then he says, but look, in the midst of this massive drama, this little creature comes onto the stage. Right? It's like moving around, and it's got these mortal pangs. And then those actors become its food. And these angels have to weep at seeing. This is the end of this creature as they eat his flesh. Out are the lights. All these lights go out. You know, you've got the lights of your play that goes on for its certain time, and then it goes out. And then the curtain comes down with the rush of a storm. And the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising and veiling affirm. The angels have to say, the tragedy you just watched is man, and its hero the conqueror worm. Anyway, that's one end. That's not the only possible ending to the play, but that is definitely one of them. The Prophet ﷺ said the worms don't eat the righteous. They leave them alone. They actually call it incorruptibles. There's a word in science for it. Bodies that actually don't get eaten by worms. They don't decay or anything. They call them incorruptibles. You can look it up. I didn't make that up. Barakallahu fikum. Alhamdulillah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad salatan tunjina biha min jami' al-ahwari wal afat wa taqdi lana biha jami' al-hajat wa tutahhiruna biha min jami' as-sayyiat wa tarfa'una biha a'la darajat wa tuballighuna biha aqsar ghayat min jami' al-khairat fi al-hayati wa ba'da al-mamat wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam taslima. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wassalamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Now, this section in the Madkhal is very, very interesting. He has a long section about not sending your children